the UK going to agree with the rest of the world, and what is that differential going to be? And some of that's not in our control.
We'll come back to cost. Rushanara.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I just wanted to pick up a question on the Chair's question, and you said, Mr. Thompson, that since August 2017 you have more information on the cost of implementation to government and business.
Yes.
Could you provide, so either in writing or further down the line, if you could provide the specifics to us, that would be really helpful.
Would you like me to do it now?
If you want to, yeah, that would be really helpful.
So on the highly streamlined arrangement, there are broadly three costs for businesses. So first of all, in leaving the customs union, you have to assume that under WTO rules or under any trade agreement, there are customs declarations required. We know that there were, in 2016, almost 200 million intra-EU consignments. So that is the base number. That's been audited by the NAO and is in a report on the Customs Declaration Service. The question is, how much does it cost to complete a customs declaration? We've done some work ourselves. There have been at least two independent reports, one by the University of Nottingham Business School, one by KPMG earlier in the year. The answer to that question is it's between £20 and £55. You can't average it out because of weighting, but for ministers we've settled on £32.50 per customs declaration. So you've got 200 million customs declarations at £32.50, that's £6.5 billion.
6.5 billion. Right.
And that's on the UK side. Obviously there are declarations required on the EU side as well, so
you double that number, probably. So that takes you to 13. You've then got the question about what might be the requirements from the European Union on rules of origin.
Yeah.
Is this cheese from Cheddar?
Yeah.
And so on. Now it's quite difficult to estimate that, but it would be reasonable to think that it's several billion pounds more. So I think you need to think about the highly streamlined customs arrangement costing businesses somewhere in the late teens of billions of pounds.
I've started to lose count now at the number of billions.
But so somewhere between 17 and 20 billion. It's that sort of order, and the primary driver here is the fact that there are customs declarations. So if you like, switching to the new customs partnership, because what it tries to deliver is the free flow of goods between the 27 and the UK without customs declarations, then it avoids those costs that I just gave you in the highly streamlined model. And in a sense, it's self-regulating. So if you assume that businesses are economically rational and that they'll only try to get the tariff differential back if it's worth their while, you could argue that it must be zero or less. Now, but that's probably an unrealistic thing to say. The maximum amount it can be is the total amount of tariffs. If the UK made all tariffs zero and all of it could be reclaimed, that's also an unlikely scenario, and that comes in at 3.4 billion. But remember, the business would be getting that back on the tariff, so it might spend 100 and get 150 back. So I mean, you could argue that the NCP has a net cost of zero or less, depending on the tariffs. Is that clear enough that they're quite different?
I think so, but I would love to have the analysis in writing.
I can set that in writing, but to be crystal clear about it, highly streamlined is somewhere in the 17 to 20 billion, and the cost for the new customs partnership, the estimate of the setup costs are around £700 million, and then the reclaim would pay for itself.
Yeah, that's really
and obviously the work that we're doing on the new customs partnership, obviously if the administrative costs came out equivalent to the tariffs, then it's not much of an incentive for businesses. So a lot of the work that we are doing is about keeping that administrative cost of the repayment mechanism as low as you can possibly make it, so that the tariff differential is as valuable as you can possibly.
And it would be helpful to get a breakdown on cost to government versus cost to business as part of your update.
I didn't give you the cost to us.
I think you might
Yeah,
have done.
how much is that going to cost HMRC to do all of this?
Well, against those numbers, very reasonable, he said, in anticipation of his spending review. So look, the way in which the Treasury is working is they're doing it year by year. It's a totally rational way of doing it. That's the way I do it if I was the Treasury. So we have an allocation for 18-19. Very, very early estimates of the status quo running cost for us is in highly streamlined around 250 million, and in new customs partnership somewhere in the order of 180 million a year. And the differential is because of the fact that the highly streamlined model requires customs declarations, therefore I have to put more people into the customs hub in Manchester to process those customs declarations. That's
And are you having to divert resources from other things that you do to scale up the work you're doing preparing for Brexit?
Not per se, we're not, but because we're being funded at 260 million extra for 18-19. But we did, I think John
you touched
Mann,
last time. That's right.
prompted shouldn't you reprioritise your portfolio?
Yeah.
We did complete a full reprioritisation, and we have stopped entirely or slowed down significantly 39 other projects we otherwise would have done.
I don't know if you've shared that with us, but it'd be really helpful to know those. You may have already done so, apologies.
I'm sorry, I'm happy to write you. I thought I'd copied you to a letter to make a letter. But
I was going to say, I think you might have shared it with
we may have it. In which case, apologies.
Sure.
I don't recall seeing it, which may be my fault. Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you. In terms of just going on to, it would be good to have a bit more detail on another point, which is the government in its paper on customs in August stated that it was keen to explore on the partnership model. It was keen to explore the approach business and other stakeholders, approach with business and other stakeholders to understand the practical complexities involved in making it work. You've all highlighted the practical complexities of the cost to business, so thank you for that. But can you say a bit more? I know you've touched on some of it already, but those points that you haven't on the work that's been done with stakeholders and what their views are on practical complexities. Anything else you want to add to that?
So I think besides the cost, which I think I've been pretty clear about, I think there's some business angst about time delays. Yeah. Will any new system introduce time delays, particularly at critical ports? Yeah. Dover, Eurotunnel and Holyhead are the top 3 ports for that. Yeah. There are some port-specific issues, and then there's separately the question of fast parcels, which hasn't really ever been a conversation with anyone, but because British people are the most are very, very good e-shoppers, there are 1 billion parcels involved in this conversation, believe it or not.
Wow.
Somewhere. And we've done quite a lot of work with the Royal Mail and with fast parcel operators about how do you operate e-commerce in this this world too. So I think it's cost, time, making a decision and then implementing that, some specifics on ports and then parcels.
And you fed all of that into, thank you. And then the chair of HMRC's Industry Consultation Group for Brexit, Peter McSweeney, said to this committee that the partnership model, he described it as a ridiculous suggestion. Is this a fair assessment of the customs and freight industry's views of the partnership model?
You want to try that one?
Yeah. Yes, I mean, first of all, no, I don't think it's a fair view, but it is a view that obviously some people hold. I think it goes back to the fact that this is an innovative model, and people who are involved in customs do not immediately recognise it. I think Peter's comments were made quite early on, and since then we've talked about the work that we've done since last August. We've had a lot of sort of more in-depth engagement with businesses about what is required to make it operable, and in particular to make that repayment mechanism as attractive as possible.
He's got a point though, hasn't he? If some of those costs that Mr. Thompson described earlier, that they're not currently having to bear, if they come to light, it would be ridiculous, wouldn't it?
Well, on the new customs partnership, I think we've identified 2 new Sorry, if we're talking about the new customs partnership,
Yeah.
there are two levels of admin costs. First of
Yeah.
all, there's about £700 million, which is a sort of set-up cost for operating that dual tariff at the border.
It's a lot of money.
And then there is the cost of reclaiming the tariff differential, which, as John mentioned,
Yeah.
can be cancelled out. That is, those admin costs are significantly lower than the highly streamlined model, which is one that Peter obviously would recognise more as a traditional customs model.
Okay. So I'm going to move on to Sorry, I've got one more. Okay. That's going to be interesting. I'm going to move on to non-disclosure notices, agreements. So there's been reports that the government's asked firms and industry groups that are engaging with over the customs matters to sign the NDA. Is this the case? And can you understand some of the frustrations associated with that for business, if that's the case, and also for Parliament, for us not to be aware of what the kind of barriers are, beyond obviously what we're hearing in this committee and what you're sharing with us?
So it is true that we have signed a range of NDAs. I've not heard anyone in industry share any frustration about signing an NDA. I think you said your middle point was you thought there was some frustration.
Mr. McSweeney comes up. Can I quote him again? He says,
Sure.
"I don't know what the secrecy is. I don't understand the paranoia." So he's clearly concerned. There must be others who are concerned about it. How would you? I mean, how would you know
I've travelled.
if they've signed up to an NDN and they're not going to complain about it, are they? If they're signing to a secrecy arrangement, how would you know if they're frustrated about it? If
Well,
they're
so
being
they
gagged in effect?
I think so there's a long-standing joint consultative customs committee. It's been there for a very, very long time. That involves a huge number of industry players. I've travelled widely. I've not had anyone go, "Oh, I didn't really want to sign that NDA."
But would they tell you?
What they've welcomed is the fact that they could sit and talk privately about, if you want to do this, you need to understand what this means. Do you want to walk up and down the dock and see what it means? And that enriches our understanding of implementation. That enriches the political advice, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think, from my point of view, is dealing with these people practically. First of all, I think Peter is the only person who I'm aware of who's had any problem with this. But first of all, we are exploring with stakeholders options and choices and kicking things around that are not government policy and that go way beyond what the government has decided. We are also, on the other hand, on the other side, getting commercially sensitive information from people that they would not wish to be in the public domain. So they are mutually non-disclosure agreements, and they've been very advantageous to us in having open dialogue with stakeholders where we can be open with them and they can be open with us in the knowledge that what we're kicking around is not going to get...
Sure, I appreciate that, but there may be some areas where businesses do want to speak out because it's in their interest to do so,
Yes.
rather than relying on HMRC or others or parliamentary committees. I mean, it might be their business associations who highlight on these specifics that there are problems that they want to speak out about. Isn't that a problem?
So I don't really understand, and I apologise in advance for this, I don't really understand what the angst is. I think business groups and individual businesses have been pretty vocal in terms of these options, Brexit in general. Look, I don't want to point anyone, but the Chief Executive of Sainsbury's was very, very clear about how he felt about some of these considerations, and there have been a whole string of them. I don't think signing an NDA that allows us to understand in more detail at a technical level how exactly do these things work is holding any business back from saying what they think about the options in public. There have been a wide range of views have been shared, it seems to me, from the private sector.
Okay, thank you. Stuart.
Sorry.